Moonlight hits the prairie like cold silver, spreading across the grass in a thin, shimmering veil. Most people today think night is a wall, something that blocks vision, slows movement, and invites danger. But for native hunters on the Great Plains, night was not a barrier. It was an advantage. Here's the catch. The darker the world became, the stronger their senses grew. While outsiders stumbled through shadows, Lakota hunters moved with such quiet precision that even predators failed to notice them. It sounds impossible until you realize how brutal nighttime could be for anyone who didn't understand how to read it. Imagine winter settling in, snow crusted hard across the ground, and a thin wind slicing through the valleys. Food runs thin. Fires must be kept small to avoid attracting unwanted visitors. And every movement outside the teepee becomes a risk. But this is where the story shifts. Instead of hiding from darkness, native hunters stepped into it. Weird part. They chose moonless nights on purpose because the shadows became allies, and the predators, blinded by hunger, relied too much on scent and noise. Hunters knew this and used silence the way others used weapons. Now picture a hunter standing at the edge of a cottonwood grove. His breath hangs low, not rising, not glowing. He waits until his eyes adjust, a slow biological shift that most modern people never feel. Rod cells in the retina wake up, cones shut down, and colors drain from the world. Shapes become more important than details. Edges sharpen. Movement reveals itself in ways impossible under sunlight. Most people force their eyes to work the same day and night. Native hunters didn't. They trained the body to slide between vision modes like flipping a switch. The prairie at night is loud in its own way. Coyotes sweep across the ridgelines. Owls skim low over frozen grass. Deer step cautiously near water sources, knowing mountain cats watch from just beyond the moonlight. Every creature is listening for the one mistake that exposes weakness. Smart move. Native hunters learned to break their footsteps into fragments. Instead of full heel-to-toe landings, they spread their weight across soft edges, letting the foot test the ground before the body commits. It's slow, calculated, almost invisible. The earth barely notices. Predators don't hear it. Prey senses nothing. But night brings new pain. Cold tightens muscles. Frost burns exposed skin within minutes. And a single snapped twig could end the hunt or invite something worse, like a starving mountain lion circling the camp perimeter. Generations of harsh winters shaped these techniques, turning them from simple skills into survival laws. You didn't walk at night, you floated. You didn't see the dark, you absorbed it. You didn't fear predators, you studied their rhythm, their blind spots under the moon. Here's the twist. Darkness wasn't just an environmental challenge, it was a teacher. It taught families where to camp, how to hide firelight, how to hear the difference between snow settling and pause pressing. It forced tribes to read wind shifts, track reflections on frozen streams, and understand how moon phases changed animal behavior. Every night offered lessons written in silence. Hunters learned them because not learning meant hunger, danger, or worse. The deeper mystery is this: how did they turn vision, silence, and lunar light into a system so reliable it kept entire camps safe? That answer opens the door to the next insight, because once you see how night vision works in nature, the whole world of silent walking begins to make sense. Night on the plains isn't empty. It's layered. Thin sheets of light, shadow, sound, and scent weaving together into a living map. Most modern people see darkness as a void, but native hunters understood it as information. That's the first aha moment. The night reveals more when you stop trying to fight it. Here's the catch. Your eyes are designed to switch modes, but you have to let them. Hunters knew that true night vision doesn't come from seeing more. It comes from seeing differently. When a Lakota hunter stepped into the night, he didn't rush his eyes. He waited. He let the rods adjust, allowed color to fade out, and watched the world reshape itself into gradients of light and motion. Biology played a quiet role here. Rod cells can detect a single photon, and hunters used that sensitivity like a tool. They didn't stare directly at something they wanted to see. They looked slightly to the side, letting peripheral vision pick up movement long before direct sight could. Weird part. The sides of your eyes see better in the dark than the center, and native hunters figured that out without textbooks. Moonlight became a partner, not a hindrance. On bright nights, snow turned into a giant reflector, illuminating tracks, ridgelines, and distant silhouettes. On darker nights, the shadows created hiding places that made movement safer than daylight. The insight is subtle. Daylight shows details, but moonlight shows patterns. A deer's outline blends into trees when the sun is strong, but under a pale moon, its rhythmic motion glows faintly against still branches. Hunters trained themselves to read those micro-patterns, sensing where prey would step next before it happened. But the real genius lies deeper. Night vision isn't only about the eyes, it's about the entire body becoming a sensory system. A hunter adjusted his breath so steam stayed low. He felt wind direction as temperature on the cheek. He sensed open space by the way sound traveled across it. Smart move. They walked until the earth spoke back. Soft soil, brittle snow, hollow patches over frozen roots. Each texture told them how loud or silent their next step would be. Here's another insight that flips modern logic. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's controlled sound. Hunters didn't try to erase noise. They shaped it. They matched their rhythm with natural sounds. Wind brushing tall grass, snow shifting under temperature changes, owls landing on branches. When movement blends with ambient noise, predators misread it as part of the landscape. That is the essence of silent walking. Your presence becomes statistically invisible. Dark adaptation went hand in hand with nutritional wisdom. Historically reported diets rich in vitamin A, from fish, liver, berries, and certain wild plants, supported night vision naturally. Hunters understood the connection without scientific language. If winter meals lacked these foods, vision dimmed, reaction slowed, and night hunts became dangerous. Survival depended on biology as much as skill. The more you observe, the more the world reveals. The plains taught that predators have their own blind spots at night. Wolves rely on scent and pack coordination. Mountain lions depend on surprise. Bears react slowly when startled in moonlight. Hunters mapped these weaknesses like a mental atlas, turning nighttime into a strategic advantage. And that brings us to a deeper layer. Once you understand how the night works, you need the tools to use it effectively. Silent movement, lunar reading, dark adaptation. They're only half of the system. To survive under moonlight, you need structures, tools, and methods purposely designed for darkness itself. Tools for the night were never just objects. They were systems, extensions of the hunter's eyes, breath, and instincts. Most people imagine bows and spears, but the real power came from how every piece of equipment interacted with darkness. Here's the catch. None of these tools were designed for daytime advantage. They were built to thrive in the thin, silver world under moonlight. Start with the moccasins, soft-soled, stitched from tanned hide, and shaped to hug the ground like a second skin. Modern hiking boots amplify noise with every step. Moccasins erase it. They spread pressure, soften impact, and let hunters feel microtextures, broken twigs, loose pebbles, frost-hardened grass, before weight settles. Weird part. The shoe wasn't only footwear, it was a sensory antenna. A hunter knew if a predator recently passed by whether the snow was freshly compressed or already refrozen. One wrong texture could reveal danger long before eyes confirmed it. Clothing mattered too. Heavy layers trapped noise, but layered hides, historically reported among plains tribes, absorbed sound rather than broadcasting it. The outer layer stayed matte to avoid moonlight glare. The inner layer stayed warm enough to reduce shivering. A tiny vibration that predators could hear. Smart move. Anything shiny or reflective was eliminated. Even beads were chosen carefully, using bone or wood instead of polished shell that might flash under lunar light. Then came the tools that shaped vision, not by enhancing sight, but by protecting it. Hunters shielded their eyes from sudden light sources. Fire was kept behind hides. Torches were never carried on hunts. Even moonlit snow, when too bright, was viewed from angles that avoided reflections. Their understanding of visual chemistry was practical. Rods take time to recharge. Lose your dark adaptation, and it could take half an hour to return. That's a lifetime when predators move. Weapons were tuned for silent operation. Bows were wrapped in thin hide to mute vibration. Bowstrings were rubbed with animal fat for quiet draw. Arrows were fletched with asymmetrical feathers that stabilized flight, without the loud hiss modern arrows make. This detail alone allowed hunters to shoot without breaking the ambient soundscape. A predator didn't notice the weapon. It only reacted to the impact. But tools for the night extended beyond weapons. They included reading instruments built entirely from nature. Snow became a tracking board, reflecting movement with surprising clarity under moonlight. Frozen river surfaces worked like mirrors for silhouettes. Even the faint glimmer of ice on tall grass revealed wind direction, helping hunters position themselves downwind of prey or predators. Carrying gear was minimal. Too much weight disrupted balance. Hunters selected only essentials: a knife, a small pouch of dried meat, a water skin insulated with fur, and sometimes a small piece of charcoal for masking scent. Here's a twist. Charcoal wasn't for fire. It was for the skin. Mixed with animal fat, it dulled scent, reduced shine, and warmed the face by absorbing faint heat from the body. It became a practical thermal camouflage, centuries before modern militaries adopted similar tricks. Even tools for communication adapted to darkness. Hand signals were simplified to minimize movement. A raised palm meant stop. A slight tilt of the wrist meant shift right. Sound cues relied on soft, natural noises. 2 clicks mimicking insects, or a light throat hum that blended into wind. These weren't primitive gestures. They were night-optimized signals that allowed hunters to coordinate silently across shadows. One tool stands above the rest: the mind. Hunters memorized lunar cycles. They tracked how each phase affected predators. Full moons gave wide visibility but sharper shadows. Crescent moons created diffuse light perfect for silent approach. On new moon nights, hunters relied entirely on touch, wind, and peripheral vision, moving through darkness that most modern people would find impossible. Every tool, from moccasins to moon phases, worked as a single integrated system. And that system unlocked the next stage of survival: the real practice of silent walking. How these tools came alive in motion, in decision-making, and in the delicate dance between hunter and night. Silent walking only becomes real when every tool, instinct, and fragment of night vision turns into action. Knowledge means nothing if your body doesn't know how to use it. And here's the catch. Native hunters didn't practice silent walking. They lived it. Every step, every breath, every decision under moonlight followed patterns shaped by generations, who survived because they understood what darkness demanded. Start with the first few moments outside the teepee. A hunter never rushed into the night. He stepped out slowly, letting the air settle around him. Temperature shifts, wind direction, and distant echoes formed a map he could feel before he could see. Weird part. The night speaks more clearly when you're still, not when you move. Hunters listened before they acted. A distant owl meant small game nearby. Silence on the riverbank meant predators might be watching the water. Even how frost clung to branches told them how long the cold had held the land. Once movement began, the entire body changed rhythm. Silent walking relied on 4 core behaviors. First was foot placement. Instead of heel-first steps, hunters tested the ground with the outer edge of the foot, transferring weight only after confirming silence. This broke the sound into micro steps, which predators struggled to interpret. Second was posture. The body stayed low, knees slightly bent, allowing weight to drop softly and balance to shift effortlessly. Third was breath control. Exhaling too quickly created steam clouds visible in moonlight. So hunters released breath downward, close to the chest, letting vapor disappear before rising. Smart move. This simple habit erased one of the easiest giveaways in cold weather. Fourth was pace. Modern people speed up to finish a task. Hunters slowed down to survive. Moving too fast breaks dark adaptation and triggers noise. Moving too slow erases presence entirely, so they matched the land's tempo, pausing when wind paused, stepping when tall grass swayed. They became part of the landscape's heartbeat. Tracking in darkness followed its own logic. Instead of relying on crisp footprints, hunters looked for disruptions. A faint bend in reeds, fresh frost scraped off a log, breath marks on cold air. Moonlight turned these distortions into clues. Under a half moon, shadows stretched long enough to reveal movement far before it reached the hunter. Under a bright moon, snow glowed with a diffuse blue light, highlighting any creature that shifted between trees. Silent walking also included scent discipline. Hunters positioned themselves downwind, which required constant awareness of air patterns. Snow carried smell differently than dry earth. Humid nights amplified scent trails. Cold nights compressed them. A hunter read these shifts like reading a river's current. Then came group coordination. Hunts rarely happened alone. 2 or 3 hunters moved in staggered formation, each acting as a sensor for different parts of the land. The lead hunter watched for movement. The second listened for faint disturbances. The third sensed terrain texture, marking safe paths. No one spoke. No one whispered. A tilt of the chin replaced a sentence. A single controlled exhale signaled danger. Prey behavior changed at night, and hunters adapted. Deer moved in arcs, avoiding direct moonlight. Rabbits paused longer between hops, listening for predators. Wolves patrolled ridgelines, using elevation as their advantage. Hunters used these patterns to anticipate movement, positioning themselves where animals would be, not where they were. Even retreat had rules. A hunter never turned his back fully. He stepped away at angles, keeping peripheral vision engaged. He avoided stepping on cold rocks that cracked under weight. He passed over snow patches already hardened by wind. Weird twist. Sometimes the safest sound to make was a small one. A light crunch mimicking a harmless animal, preventing predators from noticing sudden, unnatural silence. Finally, camp return was its own ritual. Hunters approached from angles that avoided disturbing sleeping families. Dogs recognized familiar steps. Firelight stayed hidden behind hides so it wouldn't blind returning eyes. Only after dark adaptation faded did the hunter rejoin the warmth inside. All of these behaviors formed a single philosophy. You do not conquer the night. You cooperate with it. And that cooperation delivered real results: safety, food, and survival in conditions that would break anyone who tried to overpower darkness instead of learning its rhythm. The results of these nighttime techniques weren't abstract. They were the difference between danger and safety, hunger and abundance, chaos and control. Most people today think survival depends on strength or luck, but here's the catch. For native hunters, survival depended on harmony, on reading the night so well that the land stopped feeling like a threat and started acting like an ally. The first benefit was safety. Silent walking reduced encounters with predators not by scaring them off, but by avoiding them entirely. When your steps are softer than falling snow, wolves can't track you. When your breath doesn't rise in a bright column, mountain lions can't see you. When you move in rhythms that mimic the environment, bears mistake you for wind-shaken branches. Weird part: invisibility isn't about hiding, it's about blending. Hunters became statistically undetectable, lowering the risk of night attacks across entire camps. The second benefit was precision in hunting. Night movement allowed hunters to reach spots that were impossible during the day: watering holes, ridge crossings, or winter feeding grounds where prey gathered under moonlight. Animals moved slower at night, more cautiously, revealing patterns that daylight often masked. A deer lowering its head to drink under a thin crescent moon created a mirrored shadow on the water that could be anticipated from meters away. Smart move. Hunters positioned themselves where those predictable arcs converged, increasing success while using less energy during harsh winters. Another advantage was fuel efficiency. When night hunts succeeded, families used far less wood for fires because they had reliable food sources without long daytime chases. Wood was precious in winter, so precious that tribes sometimes used only 1/10 the fuel needed to heat a log cabin. Silent walking indirectly reduced the need for constant fire, helping camps stay warm without exhausting resources. Night adaptation also strengthened community structure. With predictable nighttime safety, children and elders could sleep without fear, wrapped close to the fire while adults monitored the land. Confidence in nighttime movement meant families could relocate camp swiftly if weather shifted, avoiding frostbite zones, snow traps, or predator territories. Stability wasn't accidental. It was engineered through knowledge. Silent walking had ecological benefits too. Hunters moved lightly, avoiding damage to winter grasses, hollow roots, and fragile snow layers that protected seeds for spring. Their minimal footprint preserved ecosystems, long before sustainability became a modern idea. The land remained productive because the people walking through it respected its limits. And perhaps the most overlooked benefit, these nighttime skills became a cultural anchor. When a hunter mastered darkness, he didn't just gain a survival technique. He earned trust, responsibility, and status within the community. The knowledge shaped identity, strengthened resilience, and connected entire generations to a deeper understanding of nature's rhythm. By the time dawn touched the horizon, silent walking had done far more than secure food. It had protected families, preserved resources, honored the land, and proven that the night, far from being an enemy, could be a powerful partner. When the first line of sunlight breaks across the plains, something subtle happens. The night loosens its grip, shadows fold away, and the world returns to the loud confidence of day. But for native hunters, dawn never erased what the darkness taught. Here's the catch. The lessons of the night were never just about hunting. They were about understanding your place in a world that never stops moving, never stops teaching, and never stops testing those who walk upon it. Silent walking wasn't a trick. It wasn't magic. It was discipline, built from patience, respect, and a willingness to listen. Moving under moonlight required humility. You couldn't rush the land. You couldn't force your eyes to see what they weren't ready to see. You couldn't fight the cold or fear the predators. You had to release control and let the environment guide the way. Weird part: the quieter the hunter became, the more the world spoke back. And that's where the cultural wisdom shines the brightest. Night wasn't something to overcome. It was something to cooperate with. This worldview shaped every decision in Lakota life, from how homes were placed, to how food was gathered, to how families protected one another during the coldest months. The darkness wasn't an enemy. It was a teacher with its own curriculum: patience, observation, adaptation, and trust. These values carried far beyond the hunt. Children learned them while listening to stories beside the fire. Elders passed them down through quiet instruction, reminding younger generations that strength comes not from noise or force, but from sensitivity and awareness. Communities strengthened because they understood that survival was a shared effort, not an individual pursuit. Smart move. Knowledge was never hoarded. It was given freely, because each skilled hunter made the whole circle safer. In today's world, filled with constant noise, bright screens, and a belief that more light solves everything, this wisdom feels almost radical. Yet the science behind it remains true. Dark adaptation, sensory awareness, ecological balance, energy efficiency, these ideas resonate now more than ever. Silent walking isn't about going backward. It's about remembering a way of living where humans paid attention, respected natural limits, and moved through the world without overwhelming it. The night, once feared by outsiders, became a realm of strength for native communities. It held danger, yes, but also clarity. It held predators, but also pathways. It held silence, but also knowledge. And when hunters returned at dawn, the quiet confidence they brought back wasn't just a personal triumph. It was a gift to their families, their community, and the land itself. So the message is simple, but powerful. The world still whispers, even if we've forgotten how to listen. Indigenous knowledge teaches us that survival isn't louder, faster, or brighter. It's wiser, softer, and more in sync with the rhythms of nature. Honor native wisdom. Protect indigenous knowledge. Learn from the land. Move with it, not against it.